Hey, friends, and welcome. I am speaking from the mountains. Hopefully, you all can hear me. My wife forced me to take a vacation with the family, but the news doesn't stop, and we have a major constitutional crisis which is developing, has been developing for a while. So I thought, you know what? There is no sleep for the wicked, so there should be no sleep for middle-aged dads. And how else to break down this massive constitutional crises, folks? This is important. Then political scholar friend Norman Ornstein, who, by the way, folks, now writes for The Contrarian. You can see him on Mary Trump Nerd Avengers. He has written fantastic books outlining the descent of the Republican Party into what I call now is a fascist movement. He's been on it for the past 13 years. He is a former emeritus. It's called emeritus. I'm a simple man.
Emeritus.
Emeritus. See, this is why English was not my first language. Emeritus scholar at AEI. Norm is here to talk about. Well, I thought yesterday was the latest breaking news. A federal judge, Judge Shinas, I believe that is her name, demanding in harsh language to bring back the immigrants who, in my opinion, were kidnapped and sent to die in an El Salvador prison without due process. Pam Bondi, the attorney general, shamelessly lied to the American public on Fox, especially about Abrego Garcia. That is the father of three children. The man who was abducted and kidnapped from Maryland. He was been here for 5 years. The judge said gave him withholding of removal, zero criminal charges, and this administration refuses to send him back, despite saying that the administration, was sent him in a clear administrative order. And earlier today, Judge Boasberg, a federal judge, ain't messing around, folks. He finds probable cause of Trump officials' criminal contempt of his order to bring back flights. He gives the government opportunity to purge the contempt, and if not, and if the DOJ will not prosecute, he will, quote, appoint another attorney to prosecute the contempt. With all of that, I invite Norm to discuss the contempt of Donald Trump for our courts, for our human rights. I gave you a lot, Norm, to set the table. You take it away.
So this is chilling in so many ways, Waj. Of course, what Trump has been doing, Pam Bondi and all the rest, is also defying the Supreme Court, but lying blatantly about that. We saw Stephen Miller, and I think the best nickname for him is Pee Wee Herman Goering. Uh,
I call him Pee Wee German, but that's a
yeah,
good one too.
well, Tom Homan I call Inhuman Homan, and but my favorite is the Commerce Secretary, who I now call Howard Nutlick. Um, but all of that aside,
If Norm can say it, you can say it, folks. If
right?
Norm can say it, you can say it. He's the elder, so he has sanctioned these words.
Uh, it's one of the ways of catharsis out of this nightmare. But Stephen Miller in the Oval Office said to Trump, "The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 in our favor," which is exactly the opposite of what happened. But the Supreme Court issued a namby-pamby opinion. Having said that, it was 9-0, saying all of these people deserve their day in court. The hedge was it has to be through habeas corpus, which
Mm,
means the state where they are imprisoned, which means most of them will come in Louisiana and Texas, which is not the best place. But nonetheless, they're defying him.
yep.
And one of the rulings involving Abrego Garcia, the Trump lawyers basically said once somebody is out of the country, then courts have no role to play because it's the president's inherent capacity in the Constitution over foreign policy. What that means, of course, is along with Trump in his disgraceful meeting with the president of El Salvador saying we're going to send citizens down to you, build 4 or 5 more of these hellhole prisons, is that he could spirit any of us, American citizens, out of the country, kidnapping us off the streets. And we've seen all these videos of people with no identification wearing hoodies and masks, grabbing people and taking them, send them to El Salvador or any other country that he favors, Russia or Turkey or wherever it might be, and then basically saying, can't do anything about it, too bad. So this is a challenge, and you're absolutely right. It is the constitutional challenge of our time. Can this president and his lackeys, lickspittles, and minions get away with openly defying the federal courts? And for Judge Boasberg, good for him. The question I have, and this gets back to John Roberts, who's unleashed
Mhm.
much of this with the outrageous, completely anti constitutional immunity decision, that Trump is likely to pardon anybody who is brought up on charges of criminal contempt. What I would hope that these judges would do is actually declare them in contempt, send the marshals out, and put them in jail right now. And that goes all the way up. Every Department of Justice attorney who has lied to or deceived any judge should be put in jail right now. This is a direct slap on justice. And we have a president who's unleashed, who believes that anything that he does is okay because the Supreme Court has said that he can do it, and he will pardon anybody who commits an illegal act in his name. So we're in a very bad place right now, and it goes well beyond Abrego Garcia, and it also goes to the. Here's another instance of this. The Washington Post had a piece today about how these Doge thugs are defying the courts at the Social Security Administration and getting into all of the sensitive personal data for all of us who have Social Security numbers. So the courts have made it clear over and over again they're not allowed to have access here. And every career person at the Social Security Administration who's resisted it, obeying the law, has been transferred, fired, or removed and put on administrative leave. It is the most challenging time, I think, in the history of this country for what could be a takeover that would more likely resemble Argentina's military junta that threw people off of airplanes and disappeared 30,000 of them, or Pinochet's Chile that did the same thing. And of course, they'll bring back torture here as well, much less the role models who now look, in some cases, like Orban, benign by comparison to what
That's
we're,
right.
more
It's
like
it's
Russia.
it's a lot that you said right there, Norm. And you and I have been speaking on Mary Trump's Nerd Avengers. If you don't follow us, it's live every Tuesday. We've been saying this for a couple of years that this is a fascist authoritarian regime. We've used the F word. And if Donald Trump was to gain power, backed by these red shirts, his MAGA red shirts, they will hold the law in contempt. They will hold civil liberties in contempt. They will hold the justice system in contempt. This is Orban on steroids, right? Because we're witnessing it in real time. Yesterday, you mentioned something that people aren't focusing on, which bewilders me, is that Donald Trump openly said he's open to sending U.S. citizens to foreign gulags. We are already paying Bukele of El Salvador, this crypto bro tyrant, $6 million of our money to house these immigrants, whom 60 Minutes did a report said of these 235 or so alleged gang members, 75% have no criminal charges and 22% have nonviolent criminal charges. No due process. Donald Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, has only been invoked 3 times. War of 1812, World War I, World War II, and now he invoked it. Folks, we're not in a war, but for Stephen Miller and white nationalists, our existence, and I'm going to include Jews there, Jews, brown people, black people, immigrants, invasion is a wartime, and they have invoked this to now deport innocent immigrants, and they're open to deporting U.S. citizens. And like you said, going top down, Supreme Court 9-0 ruling, they defied him. Judge Boasberg, they have kept defying him because he's the one who first said, Norm, send the planes back. And they said, yeah, I got you. You got me? Here you go. I see
Yeah.
you now. They said, send the planes back. And they said, oops, the plane have left. We don't have jurisdiction. And now they have Judge Shinis, who yesterday was very bold and blunt and said, "You have done nothing to corroborate with my requests." So I take it as knowing this administration and seeing how they've responded to the past in the past 3 months. It's only been 3 months, folks, less than 3 months since they've been in power. And seeing Pam Bondi, I don't know if you saw that clip that went viral where she was on Fox and Jesse Waters' show. Literally, the attorney general was lying about Abrego Garcia. And then Caroline Levitt just lies and now makes him into a human trafficker. They're just adding stuff, right? All they can do is Donald Trump can pick up the phone with Bukele and say, "Hey, like you've returned immigrants in the past, just return this guy." But they refuse to do it, Norm. And I think they refuse to do it for two reasons. Number one, the Trump playbook that he takes from Roy Cohn: deny, 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 attack, attack, attack. Number two, if you admit you're wrong, you're weak. But number three, if Abrego Garcia comes back and if he's alive, he will have stories to tell. Your take as to why they're being so stubborn, so pigheaded, so shamelessly contemptuous for this man that ICE itself said they sent due to an administrative error.
And a man who has 3 small children, married to an American citizen, gainfully employed, contributing to the American economy. I'll give you one larger reason, Waj, along with those that. If you look at what characterizes every vicious autocracy, it is a total lack of empathy for humanity.
Mm.
It We'll kill them. What do we care? It goes to Stalin and the purges. It goes obviously to Hitler, but it also goes to the Chinese putting Uyghurs in concentration camps. It goes to the Myanmar, I'll call them Burmese military dictators who basically went to commit genocide against a an indigenous group there. It goes to every one of them. And what we're seeing from Trump, from Homan, from Miller, from every person in this administration, from the utterly vile Marco Rubio, is they don't care that an innocent man is there. And then you get these thugs like Greg Gutfeld on Fox saying, send him to another country. What do I care? They're all cult uh, sociopaths, basically.
Oh,
So
yeah.
part of it. I think you're right that uh, they're really afraid that if he's alive, and he may not be, and Abrego Garcia comes back, that it will redound in horrible ways to their inhumanity and thuggery. But I also think that they don't want a precedent of bringing somebody back because the courts have ordered it, because the vast majority of those that they sent down there are there illegally. They
Yep.
are not gang members. They are not criminals. They were picked up. First, I've just seen a number of stories suggesting that people who are very familiar with Venezuela say that the gang that they are focusing on, that we are at war with, actually doesn't use tattoos as its identifying markers. So they just picked up any Venezuelan with any kind of tattoo. We know one of them was celebrating an autistic brother and sent them down there. And if they ran out of those with tattoos, they picked up a bunch of Venezuelans off the street who didn't have tattoos. Now, I would say a lot of this is doing the dirty work of Maduro.
Mm.
And I have thought for the last few years, since Ron DeSantis kidnapped a bunch of Venezuelans from Texas, flew them illegally to Florida, and then sent them to Martha's Vineyard, that Democrats have committed political malpractice in Florida by not telling the Venezuelan American voters who fled Maduro or who hate Maduro what is going on here, that they are actually collaborating with him. But they don't want any precedent of sending anybody back, and they don't care. And to watch the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem,
Mm.
who cares no more for human life than she does for the lives of dogs or goats, parade around cosplaying as a military figure, wearing her $50,000 or $60,000 Rolex watch as she prances in front of this horrific hellhole prison, which resembles a concentration camp,
Yep.
it's enough to make you physically ill.
Yeah, Christy Nome wore that $60,000 disgusting gold Rolex watch, cosplaying as she has, with ice jackets, holding guns. And you mentioned she also, proudly killed her own dog. It's like a gulag, right? You saw the images of those brown men just shackled and lined up. It's also like what we saw with concentration camps in World War II. You see Caroline Levitt, right, or Leavitt, with that big cross lying every day to the American public, showing off a $4,800 Louis Vuitton bag, right? You're seeing a Pam Bondi with that big cross on Jesse Waters' show, literally lying about Abrego Garcia. We know she's lying because you and me can read the court documents. We know that he was
Yeah.
granted withholding of removal. A judge looked at all the facts and said, "Yeah, I'm going to give you withholding of removal because you're under threat of persecution if you return to your home country of El Salvador." And they kidnapped this man just because he was brown at the wrong place and wrong time and sent him back to El Salvador. And he has a wife, he has 3 kids, like you mentioned, zero criminal charges. You mentioned two things I want to unpack real quick. The dehumanization of it all. I went to Auschwitz with a multiracial, multi-faith group of Americans several years ago, Norm. And we visited the painful legacy of what happens when an entire country, a nation, casually dehumanizes another group of people. And as we were walking through Auschwitz, we were talking about the first term of Donald Trump, and we are talking about how he was talking about the invaders and the rapists and the criminals, the immigrants. And one of the tour guides leaned in, and this tour guide is really interesting. He says, "I volunteer my time because my grandfather escaped. And so I feel like I want to give back and I just volunteer as a tour guide." And he leaned in, he goes, "I hope you don't mind me saying something, but that's how it begins." And we're like, "What?" "It always begins with language, the dehumanizing language. That's how it always starts. Rapists, criminals, invaders, war, vermin, poisoning the blood." Donald Trump used Hitler's language to describe immigrants. Haitians eating dogs and pets, a Nazi conspiracy that he knew was a lie, but nonetheless, him and J.D. Vance promoted. Speaking about Hitler, I always want to remind people right before the election, he quoted Hitler again and said that there are people who disagree with him are the, quote, enemies from within. And he's the first president to ever threaten unleashing the National Guard and the military against U.S. citizens. The dehumanizing aspect of this, Norm, the cruelty of it, I think, is being underplayed by our media, which kind of goes along with the dehumanization of undocumented immigrants and immigrants. What can we do better to remind people that these are people, and even if you are a gang member, or even if you are, oh, I don't know, a legal immigrant or undocumented immigrant, you still have rights in this country. There's a Fifth Amendment. The human aspect of it, first and foremost, Norm, I really want to just focus on because I think that's missing from a lot of the coverage.
I couldn't agree more. And I really do think that the goal of dehumanization is at the top of the list for Trump and the people around him. They want to extend it beyond immigrants. And to imagine Tom Homan saying that when these 200 people shackled together on an airplane where the stewardesses were told, if there's an emergency, you should not do anything for the prisoners on this plane. And he said that that was the best day of his life. Imagine that. I look at Tom Homan, and it could be a picture of a guard at Buchenwald. And I honestly think that he would love that kind of job. This is somebody who has no regard for humanity, but that is replete throughout this administration, and it starts at the top, at the very top. The other part of this is the grift, because it's all about the grift with Donald Trump.
Always.
He not is perfectly happy to go to war with innocent people, to see them tortured and imprisoned, and very possibly killed, and who knows what will happen to more of us. He's promised during the campaign a presidency of retribution, and he's starting to carry that out in a fuller way. But it is the absolute dehumanization that is the worst part of what's going on. We tolerated a lot of corruption in his first term. We tolerated a lot of wrongdoing. We tolerated, unfortunately, thanks to the Supreme Court as much as anybody, the fact that he was not in any way punished, and thanks to Mitch McConnell for inciting a violent insurrection, showing contempt for the Constitution. And our media have downplayed all of that. And I've noticed now there are going to be 3 books out which basically focus on Joe Biden and the allegations that he was non compos mentis and it was covered up by his staff. Whatever truth there is to that, and seeing him yesterday, it seems clear to me that while he obviously had some issues, this is a vast exaggeration, that this is what is dominating as much media coverage as what is going on to turn us into a fascist regime tells us volumes about the nature of our mass media right now and about what is not just false equivalence, it's actually tilting in a direction that's more favorable to Donald Trump and the Republicans than it is to the Democrats. And before I get off this hobby horse, let me also say that it's not just the dereliction of duty or worse by our mainstream media. It's also that Democrats in the Senate are treating this mostly like it's just a normal, maybe at the edges of normal process. They continue to confirm people. They continue to give Senate Republicans unanimous consent for the things that they want to do, with a few exceptions that those like Brian Schatz and Rich Dick Blumenthal, who are putting blanket holds on a lot of these nominees, like Chris Van Hollen
Yep.
now going down to El Salvador, like Chris Murphy really pushing hard, except for some harsh words. They're doing nothing with the powers that they have in the minority to bollocks up the works, to indicate to the rest of the country that they understand the gravity of the situation. I'm just dismayed by my friends among Senate Democrats who are happier having their lives in their comfortable way than they are with really doing what's necessary to take on these monsters.
You took on my second question about the Democrats because I think blame goes both ways. Obviously, and it's not both sides in the sense that we never saw this type of cruelty from Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, but Democrats voted for the Laken Riley Act. Democrats have helped confirm Marco Rubio. It was unanimous. Democrats have sat there quietly and been complicit with Gavin Newsom conceding points to freaking Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, the same man who, by the way, folks, you missed this quote where he openly said, yeah, they probably got a few innocent gardeners, but I'm sure they're swell guys, but this is what you got to do. So that's Steve Bannon who admits, yeah, they got some innocent guys. I don't care. And he was feted by Gavin Newsom. And I don't know if you saw over the weekend, shamefully, Bill Maher feted him on his show where Bill Maher got completely played by Donald Trump. He got played by like a fiddle and sat there and said, well, while this is all happening, he was nice to me. He was nice to me, Norm. He was funny. So I don't know. And another whitewashing, insane washing of Donald Trump while he's openly talking about sending U.S. citizens to a gulag. I thought, Norm, 6 or 7 Democratic senators should have joined Chris Van Hollen today. Chris Van Hollen has been strong on this. He's been strong on Gaza. He's had a human rights angle. He's down there right now in El Salvador demanding answers. Why is he the only one? Because Abrego Garcia, as a test case, even as a story, is such a powerful story that if it was Republicans, they would run with this for 3 years. This would be butthurt emails, Norm. They would spin this forever. Why is it only Chris Van Hollen who is there right now in El Salvador?
So first, let me say, Bill Maher should not be watched by anybody. He's a blowhard,
Amen.
and has been for a very long time. So that aside, whether you think there's anything funny about it or not, this is not a place you ought to go. I do not understand why we did not get more Senate Democrats going down. And I don't understand, frankly, why Westmore, the governor, did and join him. We needed to have a larger number because it'll be easier to bully a single one than it would be a larger number of them. I'm really, I was all for uh, having Democrats filibuster the budget deal and go on the offensive and create their own network to show that it was Republicans who were bringing this about because they were doing terrible things and refused to negotiate in any way. Chuck Schumer, and I have to say also some like James Carville, have adopted the strategic position that we should be playing rope-a-dope, that
Mm,
they're going to destroy themselves. And while they are doing a very good job of undermining their own capacity, the world economy is going to be in a horrific place, and the American economy will be in an even worse place than a lot of other countries. You cannot do that. Every student of the history of the growth of tyranny, said over and over again, you need immediate resistance, and the strongest resistance from every entity in the society, from the business community, the education community, the intellectual community, the scientific community, the press community, the elected officials have to resist. And if you don't do it right from the start, they will gobble up more territory until it's too late. And we're well along the way, far too far along the way toward that happening. And that's been true of most institutions. The lawyers in this country, the law firms, thank God for the ones like Perkins Coie that have resisted, that will not take this. The Sussman firm. There are a number of them that are just heroes here. But the ones that capitulated and the others that, as soon as they saw a firm under pressure, swooped in to try and take their clients so that they would then be even more likely to capitulate. That Trump now has $1 billion or so in free legal work, which he is going to use in the immigration world to try and force out more of these innocent people. It boggles the mind. Thank God for Harvard and its president now standing up. We saw what happened when Columbia capitulated and then still got screwed.
yep.
And I will, going back to your Auschwitz visit and some of the other things that you've talked about, Michael Roth is the president of Wesleyan University. And it's kind of odd. He has been, I think, for 17 years as the Jewish president of what was a Methodist school. He had a long piece in the New York Times about anti Semitism. And it was basically, don't believe a word of these people who say they're acting to combat anti Semitism. They're just using it for their own purposes. That's what they're doing with universities. These, you know, you get Nazi salutes, support for the neo Nazi party, the AFD in Germany, uh, Nazi language, attacks on Jews, neo Nazis feted in the White House and put into positions of influence. This has nothing to do with a genuine concern about anti Semitism. This is all using every tool that they can find to march us headlong into a fascist regime. And it's just not an exaggeration anymore to use these terms or to see what's happening.
I'm so glad you're using the term. You and I have been using it for a while, and we were called hysterical. I remember in 2019, maybe even 2018, the tweets are still up. I said he will not leave peacefully. He's not going to leave willingly. And I remember all these people who were center right, center left saying, "Oh, Wad, you have TDS, Trump derangement syndrome." I'm like, no, I'm just looking at the facts. I know the people. I'm paying attention. I'm taking them literally and seriously. And now, last week, if you recall, he openly said, "Yeah, I'm going to stay for a third term." When I said that a few months ago, they're like, "Watch TDS." He's openly telling you, folks. And you made a very good point that if you don't resist, folks, in addition to resisting, it stops them, it slows them down. But if you don't resist, what authoritarians do is they capture. They capture the judiciary. They capture the universities. They capture the media. And once they do that, they capture the imagination. They capture the thoughts. They capture the regulations. They capture the guardrails. And it's Orban's Hungary. You have a single party rule. It becomes an authoritarian rule where everyone just bends the knee and you cosplay as a democracy. Well, this is what the people wanted. You keep hearing Republicans say that he got the majority, right? This is what the people wanted, which is nonsense. He only won by 1.4 percentage points. He only won by a plurality of votes. But we have to do our part to tell people the other story. I want to ask the final question, Norm. I kept you a bit longer. Thank you so much for taking the time. Norm, folks, is finally on the Substack app. I got him on the Substack app, and I told him just endure the pain of me getting you through this. And he's like, huh? App? Substack? What? But now this is why we got him on, because I knew it would be a gift for other hosts to get Norm and his wisdom on. The rest of us, the rest of us who are waking up and realizing that we are now confronting a fascist regime, an authoritarian regime. I believe, Norm, the coup is done. They won, but now we have to resist it. Thankfully, they're not popular. Thankfully, you've seen the numbers. Trump is underwater. I disagree with James Carville and Schumer, who gave this strategy of playing possum. I believe the American people are disagreeing with it. You saw AOC and a few other people just get record number of money. You see the people who are fighting are now the most popular within the Democratic Party. Fighters are welcome. Fighters are wanted. Harvard, Perkins Coie, anyone who's fighting. So for the majority, Norm, as a scholar of history, as a scholar of political science, when other countries have been put in this situation, when they're facing off against an authoritarian regime, an unpopular authoritarian regime, what can the rest of us do?
So it's very difficult. And I will say, Waj, it's interesting that if you looked at the massive demonstrations in Hungary and in Turkey recently,
Yeah,
um, and in Israel for that matter, these are people who have experienced authoritarianism, and having experienced it, they want to bring it to an end. They do not want to see any kind of backsliding. We've had some demonstrations now, and they've been pretty good, downplayed by our media yet again, who continue to basically downplay and kowtow all of this. But there has not been, and there still isn't, the wider recognition in the country of where we are and where we're going. A whole lot of people voted for Donald Trump because they thought government didn't do anything for them. They didn't like the way things were going. They didn't like the price of eggs. And they thought, blow it all up, it won't affect me. We're starting now to see that it is affecting them. But what we have not seen yet is the greater appeal to empathy for
yeah,
those who should have it, and who will see what's happening to our neighbors among us. And we have to show every day that we are willing to speak out, to demonstrate, to show that there are a lot of people who are just not going to take this. If you know any journalists, you need to shame them. If you know lawyers who are working for firms that have capitulated, tell them, shame on you, you need to leave, or else you are being tagged as a collaborator with what's going on. We need to do everything we can to push people who are not behaving well. I'll add one last thing, Waj, which is we've used all these other analogies. There's one more, and that is the mafia.
mm,
Uh, Donald Trump is the capo di capos. All of these things are shakedown schemes. He's doing it with other countries with the tariffs. And basically, if I were, say, Vietnam, what I would probably do right now in the face of the tariffs is talk to Donald Trump and say, I've got this fabulous spot of land on the Mekong Delta. It will be the Trump resort and casino and golf course. Won't cost you a dime, and they'll get what they want. It's shaking them down. It's nice law firm you've got here. Would hate to see anything happen to it. And it's getting grip for him, but it's also the moguls out there
yeah,
from Diamond on down through the Bill Altmans and David Saxes and Elon Musk's and Mark Zuckerberg's and Jeff Bezos, who are perfectly happy to accommodate the horrors so long as they get lower tax rates, contracts for their firms, and more money coming into them. And they live in gated communities and they're not worried about the turmoil that might occur in the society. I think companies that are going along with this are being incredibly short sighted because the workforce is going to be just devastated. And now we're seeing resistance, not to the depredations against humans, but to what's happening to their businesses because of these Looney Tunes tariffs. But we need more. We need to put pressure on. We need to boycott companies that are going along, and we need to support those like Costco, a hero among us, who are resisting.
You know what? Costco's foot traffic has gone up for 14 weeks in a row because they resisted the cruel anti-DI measures of the Trump administration. Meanwhile, Target capitulated. Their foot traffic has gone down 14 weeks in a row. Perkins Coie, major law firm, refused to bend the knee. They're respected. Paul Weiss, Skadden, nearly every single top 100 law firm, all the people who work there, think about their legacy. Think about your reputation, right? The people who bent the knee made a short-term Faustian bargain. And I want to remind them that in Nazi Germany,
Yeah.
it was the industrialists and the corporations that went along with Nazi Germany. Some of those folks ended up convicted for war crimes a few years later. Um, Hitler said that the Reich would last for 1,000 years. It lasted only 13 years, but so many people died, folks. The Pharaoh also thought he would live forever. He also died. These people are arrogant, they're cruel, they're vicious, they never want to die. But before their time is up, they can do a lot of damage, and they will do a lot of damage to our democracy, to innocent, marginalized communities. I hope everyone can wake up. I hope people finally realize what we've been saying is that they're not going to stop at the undocumented. They're not going to stop at brown and black immigrants. He told you. He's going after foreign citizens. That's what happens in a dictatorship. Fascists are loyal to nobody but themselves. And as we've seen, Donald Trump will throw anyone and everyone, his ex-wives, his friends, his mentors, under the bus just for the grift, just for the money, just for his ego, just to be on top. And the last thing I'll say is these people are so sociopathic, so narcissistic. Norm, isn't it fascinating? Elon Musk is the richest man on earth, and it still isn't enough, Norm. It still isn't enough. They're still so miserable. It's going to take the rest of us to resist. Norm has been one of those people who's been calling it out for, I think, 15 years, maybe even 17 years. He talked about the trajectory of the Republican Party. People did not listen to him. I listened to him. Hopefully, you can listen to him. Norm, before I let you go, shamelessly promote yourself, sir.
Well, let me say to people that I do a podcast with David Rothkopf called Words Matter. And we would love to have more people join. It's part of a really good DSR network, which stands for Deep State Radio, and a lot of good stuff there. But that's, and as
You
you
also write.
mentioned,
You
I
also write
write
for
for
the.
the and I do some writing for other publications. I've got a neat little piece, actually, with Drew Penrose of Protect Democracy, coming out soon in the Washington Post of all places, which is about enlarging the House by 150 members. But it's with a bunch of graphics about how you could absolutely transform the Capitol Hill neighborhood, not just to accommodate them, but to build a kind of High Line like the one in New York,
Mm.
to bring that whole community in a larger sense, in a more vibrant way. So, I'm trying to keep up in a lot of ways. And of course, I fulminate on Twitter and Blue Sky as you do. I've continued, I don't call it by any other letter, it's still Twitter, because
Same
I've
here.
got a lot of followers, because I want to rail against these evil people, and some of them will see it.
And also, Norm is often a frequent guest on Mary Trump's Nerd Avengers, which has a new day, Tuesday. You can listen to him. Norm, thank you so much for joining. Thank you all for listening.
One
Yes,
more thing, Rod, before I go, which is
please.
um, half my time is spent doing work with a foundation which we created in our family in memory of my son Matthew, who died 10 years ago.
Mm.
And if you go to mornstein.org. You'll find a lot of stuff there. We do a summer debate camp for public school kids, Title I kids in the Washington, D.C. area. They learn debate, life skills, and all of them end up at colleges, almost all with full scholarships because of debate. And we do a lot of work in the mental health area, and you'll see a link to a film that we've done on criminal justice and mental health, and another one in the works on debate.
Norm, you're a great dad. I know your kid would be proud of you fighting the good fight. And you've taken your tragedy. I'm a father of three. You've taken your tragedy and somehow miraculously transformed it into a seed of hope and growth for other people. Not everyone could do that. So always respect to you and your wife for weathering that perpetual storm, that loss that never goes away, and somehow transforming it into an opportunity for kids. It's very noble. It's honorable work, and I just want to say, from dad to dad, I've always respected you for doing that. I never had the opportunity to tell you to your face. So, inshallah, strength to you, patience to you and your family, and strength and patience to you for your voice. This podcast with David, I did not know about it. David has been a frequent guest, vice versa. David and Norm. Folks, real quick, if you haven't listened to this podcast, listen to them. They have been in it. They know all the players. They know these Republicans. They know what they say behind the closed doors. These are grizzled veterans sharing their wisdom. And last thing I'll say is, David, since the get-go, I remember first time I met him was at Aspen 2017. He called it. He goes, all the people were there at Aspen Ideas Festival trying to grift and trying to normalize Trump. He was right there moderating, calling it all out. So to have Norm and David kind of tag team together, it's a good combo for democracy, and fascism should tremble a bit. Thank you. Oh, what's the name of the podcast, real quick?
It's called Words Matter.
Words Matter. It's on DSR, Deep State Radio, which is David's outfit. Words Matter with Norm and David. Thank you, Norm. Thank you all for tuning in to this Substack Live. See, Norm, you got like 1,000. I told you. It's going to be even better for you. Do more of these. Take care, everyone.